Gin does games!
Hey everybody, it's Gin. How y'all doing today? I apologize if I sound kind of weird. I'm sick. I can't do anything about that, but I really wanted to make this video because the Season 3 item changes are out on the public beta for League of Legends, and oh my god, I wanted to show them to you. There's so much crazy stuff. First, let me note for you that because it's on the beta, some things might be different when they come out, but for the most part, these should stay roughly the same. So, it's a general idea of what's coming out. First, let me show you what is unchanged. As you can see, it's kind of a short list, so there's a lot to talk about. So let's go! Before we move to the stuff that's still in the game, let me talk real quick about what's been removed. A moment of silence for our fallen friends. Yeah, enough of that. So, as you can see, Meki Pendant and Rear Growth Pendant are both gone. They were kind of redundant with the Regeneration Bead and Fairy Charm, respectively. Those have replaced them all in every formula where they were used, pretty much. The Tenacity items down on the left, no one ever used them, so they're gone. Leviathan is really good, but it doesn't offer any base stats, so no one ever bought it, and if they tried to buff it, it would kind of be broken. Force of Nature is pretty darn good, not broken, but it was in a place where if they tried to make any other magic resist items or regeneration items, it kind of wouldn't work because Force of Nature just overpowers everything. So they took that one out. Don't worry, they've moved some stuff around so you still get a Force of Nature feel. We'll talk about that later. The green elixir's gone because it only really benefited the AD carry, the winning AD carry specifically, at the end of the game, whoever got to the end first. Ionic Spark, kind of only useful on a couple characters. They've made a better version, so look forward to that. And finally, Heart of Gold, which honestly was really broken because it was good on everyone and slowed the game down. So yeah, bye-bye, Heart of Gold. You won't, well, you'll be missed for a little while, and then we'll forget about you because everything else is really cool. First, let's start with the simplest changes, just the amount of gold necessary to buy the items. As you can see, these here are just plain cheaper. Attack damage in general has been cheapened across the board. Now, don't worry about this making AD characters overpowered. They've changed some other stuff like attack speed and like to make it a bit more even, especially on AD carries. These items here are more expensive. Yeah, it's kind of a short list, but don't you worry about it. As you can see, Thornmail has a new creation process. Not that big of a deal really, but it doesn't change the stats at all. Next, let's talk about boots. Boots have been nerfed across the board, minus 25 movement speed to all of them. But, so that we don't change how the game flows too much, all champions have gained 25 move speed of their own. So, boots aren't quite as necessary to start the game with, which is good. You don't have to always start with them. A couple changes to some of them. Sorcerer's Shoes, slightly weaker, because of some changes to magic penetration that we'll talk about later. Ninja Tabi's more expensive. Attack speed is more expensive as well. The most interesting one here I'd like to talk about is Boots of Swiftness. They may actually be good now. They're slightly weaker by comparison in terms of move speed than they used to be, but they reduce slows. So cool. Interested in seeing this on a lot of characters really. Hecarim specifically could benefit from this since he gains attack damage based on his movement speed. The most interesting thing about Boots overall, though, is the fact that now they have a third tier. I apologize for the extremely boring page here. There's no pictures available of them at the moment for me. But how it works is any boot can be enchanted with any of these enchantments here. So if you have Boots of Swiftness or Sorcerer's Shoes, it doesn't matter which one, they can all have any of these enchantments. Alacrity's kind of boring, just base movement speed. Captain, I really like, makes for great pushing with the bonus move speed to minions, and it certainly helps to keep all your team together while charging down the enemy, or just moving around the map in general in the late game. Furor is interesting, I think particularly on any kind of assassin. I think Master Yi especially would enjoy these boots, I mean, assuming he's not using his ult at the time, but it will certainly help with any assassin trying to stick to an enemy. Distortion, this is an interesting one. Summoner spells are getting cooldown reduction on items now, and I think this one's going to be pretty popular. I'm not sure how it's going to work. In higher levels, I don't think it's going to be used quite as much because of the usefulness of Captain and the like for teams, but we'll see. Home Guard. Home Guard's my favorite just because it's so freaking funny. When you're in the fountain, you instantly gain back all of your health and mana rather than slow regeneration over time. Now, you still get it back quickly normally, but this is instantaneous. And then the insane move speed. Have you ever used Revive? It's kind of like that, with the bonus move speed. You zip right out of the base, and it in fact stays with you. If, say, for example, you teleport out of the base to a minion somewhere else on the map, you still have the bonus move speed. So suddenly you're halfway across the map and moving like Uranus. Pretty cool stuff. Now, since we're still in the early part of the video, let's talk about some early game items. Dorans specifically. They've been nerfed, for the most part, retooled so that you'll not want to stack them quite so much, and you'll use them a lot more in the early game than you will just filler in the middle and late game. The Doran's Blade, for example, has no more lifesteal, but 5 HP bonus per hit. Doing the math real quick, you need some pretty high attack damage for the lifesteal to be better for you, but since it's unique, you don't get more bonus for stacking Dorans anymore for doing that. The ring, I think, is actually better for the most part. Again, it's a unique, but if you start with this, then you have a lot better time of keeping your mana up, especially if you're getting really good at last hitting. The shield, I think, has been nerfed the most here, and I think rather unjustly since no one really used it all that much. I'm honestly not sure how much the damage block from champions is that going to be that big of a boon to it. I mean, considering the loss of all that health and armor, but, well, we'll just have to see, won't we? Now, let's talk real quick about the only consumables that have been changed, with arguably one of the most important changes in the game. Oracle's Elixir now lasts until you die, or for 5 minutes, whichever comes first. So those crazy long ward-killing wars that you found in the World Championships, not gonna happen anymore, is it? And the, well, as you can see, the elixirs have been changed slightly as well to make them a little more useful, I think, in the early levels. The AD1, less health, obviously, but more damage, which I can always go for. And, well, the AP1, as you can see, is just simply stronger in the early levels. No problem there at all. Now, in the absence of Heart of Gold, the other gold per 10 items become considerably more important, I do feel. Avarice Blade has been made much more powerful. They pull down some crit strike chance and 1 gold per 10 passively, but you get 2 gold on every single kill. So cool. Philosopher's Stone, obviously weaker. I mean, especially since you pulled out the Regrowth Pendant, it's automatically weaker, but it's cheaper, so no problem there. I think it'll still be useful, especially on your supports. And Cage's lucky pick, I'm very happy to see. Well, okay, it doesn't look good now, since it's less gold per 10, but it has some really, really cool items it's going to upgrade into, one of which gets to keep the passive. Yeah, you'll like it. You'll see it soon. Now we're going to get into the real meat of the changes. You might want to pause the screen if necessary to get everything you want out of all these pages, but these items, as you can see, are cheaper but weaker. In general, you can call them nerfed, but some of them aren't. Just depends on what you think the gold value is per stat. For example, I would say that almost all of these attack speed items have been nerfed considerably, just across the board. The Mana Manipulator right there, I would say, is actually quite a bit stronger because it's now 400 gold instead of 475, so you can actually start with items with it now if you wanted to use it to begin with. My favorite, I think, is the Rod of Ages here, which actually has more health per minute. The bonuses on Catalyst leveling up isn't quite as strong, but I certainly enjoy it. And on the next page, again, a little more complicated, but there's quite a lot of stuff. The high-end items have been brought down a little bit. The premiums for how much extra stuff you get for spending more gold has been cut down. So that's really the only reason Infinity Edge is on here. It's still really, really good. And that's really all there is to say about this page. Read and enjoy. Now, this set is quite a bit easier to talk about. Everything here has very clearly been nerfed, but for different reasons. The armor and magic resistance has been nerfed across the board because it was honestly a little too powerful in Season 2. Lifesteal as well has been nerfed. It's harder to get, and that's why Vampiric Scepter has quote-unquote been buffed, but it now costs a lot more to get, period. Sure, it gives you some attack damage now. Armor and magic penetration has been, well, the values have been nerfed, but the math has changed. It used to be that flat penetration was calculated first, and then percent, but now it's the other way around. So you get the full effect of the percentage of their total defense is taken out first, and then you get to take out your flat penetration. So because it's so much better in the calculations, they've changed how it works, or they've weakened the items ever so slightly so they aren't just overpowered and broken. Now onto some more complicated items. Bloodthirster, as you can see, same lifesteal nerf, and the armor penetration nerfs count this, and attack speed nerfs as well count the same for Youmuu's Ghostblade. Lifesteal as well for Bilgewater Cutlass, but guess what? Blade of the Ruined Kings in Summoner's Rift now. Yeah, that's right. Bilgewater Cutlass is going to turn into awesome, awesome, awesome things. And most importantly on this page, we need to talk about the slows on Phage and all of its not adversaries, what the hell am I talking about? All the things it turns into. Trinity Force, everything it came from has been nerfed, so obviously the whole combination of them is going to be nerfed as well. The most important part, though, is that they've changed the values so that it's a slightly weaker slow for ranged carries than it is for melee ones, and that's something you're going to see throughout the new items and all the changes, is that things are different between melee and ranged, and I'm hoping that works out for the best and we'll see some more melee AD carries in the near future. It is at this point in the recording process that I realize that I have started almost every single section of this with the word now. Kind of weird, and I hope I'm gonna stop doing that at this point, but let's talk about Tear of the Goddess, and stop talking about the meta of me. Tear of the Goddess, I feel, has been changed for the better, not nerfed, and the numbers are smaller, but it's better. You'll get things out of it more on a lot more characters. You get bonus mana from using spells or using mana, and I realize for most characters that's the same thing, but if you have an effect like Anivia's ultimate that drains mana from you over time, and mostly you'll find these on ultimates actually, you'll still get the bonus mana from it. So stuff like Karthus and Swain, you're going to be able to get more use out of Tear of the Goddess. And once the, well, Manamune, sorry, is weaker, but you get full mana, same as when you were casting spells when you deal attack damages, so it's gonna level up a lot faster, and it eventually will turn into Muramana, which will, if you toggle it on and off, and when you toggle it on, your attacks will consume part of your mana pool and deal twice that much, I believe, twice as much mana as it consumes in extra damage. The Seraph's Embrace, which evolves from Archangel's Staff, will give you a shield when you activate it, based on how much mana you have left. It's kind of like Blitzcrank's passive, except you actually have to turn it on yourself. Pretty darn cool, I think, and I'm really excited to use Tear of the Goddess in the near future here. Moving on, let's talk about jungling. Now, the jungle itself is a lot harder, and we'll have to talk about it in another video for the most part, but the items are really cool. First, you have Hunter's Machete, which will probably be staple for the most part on most champions. It deals extra damage to monsters, which is not my favorite design choice. I don't like how it only damages a certain type of creature on the map. I'd rather it be, if you could hit minions with it as well, but I imagine that would probably be a little too powerful for farming purposes. I'm sure they tested it out. With that and your cloth armor, that now evolves into Madred's Razors, which I find a little unfortunate. Madred's Razors kinda suck now. I heard tell on the beta that they're testing out putting the Rend from Hunter's Machete on there, so hopefully that'll help it out a little bit. The Regal's Lantern, though it doesn't build out of a sword from Madred's anymore, it gets one from Vampiric Scepter now, so it doesn't change too much. It's still nerfed, but they've been nerfing Regal's Lantern forever now, and it's still awesome. I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon. Hunter's Machete, also, if you give it the components for a Philosopher's Stone, but not an actual Philosopher's Stone itself, it will become a Sight Stone, which gives more damage to monsters, and that can be added with other things, as you can see on the left, to turn into crazy awesome super items, which I appear to have forgotten to put the items' names on the screen. But no big deal. At the top is Spirit of the Spectral Wraith, which, as you can see, is for casting sort of junglers. The middle one, the Spirit of the Ancient Golem, is for defensive junglers, Malphite and the like. And the last one is the Spirit of the Elder Lizard, which obviously is for damaging sort of junglers. I think it would be especially useful on, as you can see, Incinerate, basic attacks, and non-dot spells. Burn for extra true damage. Pretty crazy. It's like having the red buff all the time. I love it. In addition to new items, they've reworked a ton of the old ones. Behold, walls of text. Among the aggressive reworks, my favorite is the Black Cleaver. As mentioned in the Garen video, though I was slightly off, it gives you health in addition to damage. Pretty cool, but my favorite part is it shreds based on physical damage now, rather than on auto attacks, which makes it much more useful for AD casters, like Garen and Renekton, and lots of really cool people that are my favorites. Yeah! Greenso's Rage Blade, in addition to its normal stuff, which has changed ever so slightly, it's gained a new passive where you go crazy with rage if you fall below a certain health threshold, get an extra attack speed, lifesteal, and spell vamp for the rest of the fight. Really freaking cool. Hextech Gunblade has been, well, I don't know how to say it exactly. It's not entirely a rework, it still does mostly the same thing, but the active, instead of dealing a flat 300 damage, deals 150 plus more of your AP, which, if you're building, say for example, Katarina, who almost always gets this thing, will be dealing a lot more damage. And the most interesting bit is you can reduce the cooldown with attacks and single target spells. So you'll be able to use this thing more often, even with a slightly weaker slow. It's going to be really cool. Malady has a similar sort of treatment, where rather than dealing a flat 20 bonus magic damage with every attack, it deals 15 plus 10% of your AP. And let's see, Deathfire Grasp has been changed so that rather than building off of how much AP you have, it'll affect the rest of your spells, so it doesn't scale quite as much, but they changed it so it's maximum health rather than current health, so it should generally deal more damage than it used to, I mean, based on the base damage rather than the bonus scaling that it had on how much AP you had, which was pretty high. And now it amplifies all your other spells, all of which are really cool. Here we have our old high-end defenses, which have been changed around a good bit. Warmogs, for example, has gained the passive from Force of Nature. Rather than its own base regen, it no longer has the permanent health and health regen bonuses that it used to have, instead just being awesome all around, with a grand total of plus 1000 health to start. Guardian Angel has been nerfed pretty hard because it is honestly a really strong spell. Since they took out Cloth Armor and a lot of armor and magic resist from it, the premium to get the Revive bonus is pretty high, and now since it's based on 30% of your own stuff rather than a flat bonus, it's less useful on AD carries and the like, who were more likely to get it just to get back up and start shooting, so that they'll fall down much faster than they did before. Banshee's Veil has been changed in a very interesting way. It used to be a flat 45-second cooldown. Now it's 25 seconds, but you have to not take any damage for that duration. So I think that's pretty cool. If you can stay out of the fight long enough, then you can come back in with the Banshee's Veil, and it'll be back up, and all will be hunky-dory. Spirit Visage has been bumped up a pay grade or two, so that it can take the place of Force of Nature as far as a Negatron cloak-wielding awesome thing. It also has a buff that I really love to cooldown reduction and its healing passive, so that Mundo will love it even more than he already did. It's more expensive, obviously, because you had to buy the Negatron cloak, but it's still crazy awesome. Warden's Mail and Randuin Omen have been changed slightly. They're not random on the proc for when you hit them. Now it happens every single time you hit them, but it's considerably weaker than it was before. Really all there is to say about that. They've obviously changed what builds out of them now, considering Heart of Gold is gone, and, well, yeah, just in general, they've changed how that works. Next is just a short little segue into what I'll call the Grievous reworks. These items had an active ability that gave an opponent grievous wounds before. Now, they've changed it so that they happen passively. Executioner's Calling is now the Summoner's Rift version of the Wicked Hatchet from Twisted Treeline, so I think they learned a little bit from that process there. Deathfire Grasp now happens passively when they hit below a certain health threshold, based on spells, which I really like. So neither of these you have to actually aim into the middle of the fight to try and hit someone that's hard to see. Like, for example, the AD carry hiding under the big old Cho'Gath. And here come the supports with the last of this reworks. Zeke's Herald lost its attack speed and gained some attack damage. Pretty simple and straightforward, and really makes kind of sense. No support ever wanted any attack speed. Attack damage they can at least benefit from a little bit, and some of them actually want it. Not many of them, but they do. Locket of the Iron Solari no longer builds out of Emblem of Valor, and it's changed a bit since Heart of Gold is gone, obviously. So it no longer has an aura component, The active is exactly the same. It now gets some nice little cooldown reduction and some bonus health. All very cool. Alace's Miracle, that once tenacity item, is very cool now. It has one of my favorite things in the game, or within the new items in it at any rate. It gives 20% cooldown reduction on Heal, Clairvoyance, and Revive, and Alace's Blessing, which is so awesome. If you level 3 times while owning the item, that thing vanishes, and you permanently get those buffs. Now, because they keep the same name, you can't just go buy another Alace's Miracle and get it again, but you get, and I don't mean just the aid, I meant the health regen and the mana regen as well. So all of that you get permanently while freeing up another slot for you to go get more items. Supports are gonna love this. And now I can begin showing off new items in earnest. Aegis of the Legion is old, yes, but we'll start here. It no longer gives attack damage, but it now gives some health regen because it's building out of Emblem of Valor, and if you give it a null magic mantle, you can upgrade it into a runic bulwark, which is really cool. It's nice that a mid-game Aegis of the Legion now builds into something that's really useful in the late game. It gives everyone a ton of magic resist. All in all, I think this is going to be a really useful defensive item for every team to have, at least one of, well, only one of really, because it's an aura, you can only have one of each aura. But all in all, I think this is going to be really important in the game. Speaking of stuff that supports generally carry, it's time to show off some love to the supports. One of the stated goals of the Season 3 item changes was to give some supports the ability to actually buy items. And so I present to you Sightstone, the most important item I think in Season 3. It gives, well, what can I say? I call it ghost wards. Well, it calls them ghost wards, but fake wards, as it were. You can use charges to get free wards, and then it refills every time you go back to base. It'll upgrade them into a Ruby Sightstone, which isn't all that much health, but it gives more wards, and it covers just about enough warding for bottom lane. And then, so long as other people on the team keep buying wards, everyone will have just enough wards to cover the map as far as they want. Crystalline Flask covers a similar role, but as far as health and mana potions, I really like this one. I'm not sure how much use it's going to see, but it's a nice idea at the very least to replace health potions in the early game. The problem with that is, are you going to use that many potions that spending this much will get you through? But the important thing is that since it's 225, you can purchase this and then buy some wards as a support, and then once you reach 700, you can go back to base, get your Sightstone, and then you have both of that, and you can subsist for quite a while for just fine. Wraith Collar is extremely interesting. It summons pets, which automatically seek out the enemy. How cool is that? I mean, it's automatic scouting for you without having any Sightstones, and I assume they search for things you can't see since it reveals the enemies. And that would actually be even useful in team fights if you're in a largely brush-filled area, so that even if they dodge into the brush, the wraiths will find them for you, and you'll still be able to see and hit them. Cage's Last Breath is the item I was talking about earlier that builds out of the pick, but still gives you the gold bonus. This one is really cool, gives a nice aura to target ally for a short amount of time that slows things. I haven't personally seen it, but I hear it's a blizzard effect and looks really cool. MacLeod's Crucible is arguably one of the most powerful items on the PBE right now. In addition to the, I wrote it down as Mana Font on there, but that's the passive you get from Chalice of Harmony. It gives you cleanse target player and heal them as an active. What? I'm really sorry, but this looks like it's really freaking hard to balance. I hope it's not too powerful, because it looks really, really cool, and I want to use it. Now, as y'all saw earlier, attack speed items got some nerfs, but that doesn't mean they're not going to introduce some new stuff. Sword of the Divine, for one, is back, and in addition to giving you just some flat attack speed, it has an active that gives you 100% attack speed and 100% crit chance for a few seconds, and will deal a significant amount of burst damage, and then not give you any bonuses for a little while. Really cool, I feel. Zephyr is, well, it's something that'll actually build out of Stinger other than Nashor's Tooth, so I'm happy for that. It's actually a pretty cool item. I think it's something I might actually buy for the Tenacity. I mean, an actual Tenacity item that I might buy other than Boots, because it gives a ton of different items, and it would generally be very useful on certain kind of AD carries, not necessarily all of them, but Graves, for example, would be really useful with the cooldown reduction. And let's see, Static Shiv is your replacement for the Ionic Spark. In general, this should be more useful on everyone, because rather than just some people who happen to scale on attack speed, it'll be useful on people who move around a lot as well, or just anyone who... well, people who move can use the item, so everyone, kinda obvious. It's much more well-rounded, I feel, than Ionic Spark, and it's going to be really useful in the near future. I'm still probably going to use it on Shen, though. And now it's time to introduce into the game some area of effect damage on auto attacks. Yeah, this is going to be really cool. Tiamat is no longer the weird corner case item that people troll with on Tuesdays, so it's time to introduce the new Tiamat, which will deal a regular sort of cleave without random corner cases, and it has an active, which is just another attack damage spell for everything around you. It also builds into Ravenous Hydra, which is an interesting item. It, well, it gives lifesteal, and then it does all the stuff that Tiamat does, but with lifesteal attached to it. So even the spell gets lifesteal bonuses. Really cool. Now, the more talked about thing, though, is Runon's Hurricane, which will do some crazy things on AD carries. Now, it's not going to necessarily fit into the build of everyone, but it applies on-hit effects to 2 extra bolts that get fired. So, Twitch's passive, Teemo's passive, oh my god, Teemo, everyone's going to be so freaking pissed off at Teemo at all times forever. I mean, they already were, but if you want Teemo to piss you off even more, here you go. Yeah, this is going to be some fun times, I'm thinking. Next, we're going to talk about some defensive items that do some crazy offensive things. We have, first of all, a defensive branch of Sheen. Falls out a great Glacial Shroud as well to become the Frozen Fist. Gives you some pretty awesome bonuses overall, but in addition to the normal Sheen proc, which deals slightly more than the normal Sheen, it gives you a slow to every surrounding enemy, and in fact hits every surrounding enemy. This is going to be really cool, and I'm going to love it on all of my tanky characters. Blitzcrank, here we go! Ohm Wrecker. Oh my god, Ohm Wrecker, this is the stalemate killer. You can activate it to make nearby towers not attack. What? Yeah, obviously they've built in some stuff so that not everyone's going to grab an Ohm Wrecker and then just use it one after the other, so that the tower just never attacks. But in general, if you want to tower dive, this is what you get. And finally we have Mercurial Scimitar. If you thought Quicksilver Slash was bad, how about we add some attack damage to it? Yeah, the AD carries who already took Quicksilver Slash are going to be even more powerful now. In addition to cleansing, it also gives a move speed bonus, particularly if you're melee. So Tryndamere is going to be able to get out of those crazy stuns that he gets stuck in all the time. So he'll be able to get out and then keep kicking your ass. Yay! And everyone cheers with joy / sarcasm. And finally, we have 2 new items for our mage friends. One for a defensive sort of mage, and one for an offensive sort of mage. Banner of Command looks especially good for someone like Heimerdinger, who likes to push with minions. In particular, it has an active, which is essentially the spell Promote, which got removed, so fortunately it's here for us now. The aura is almost like Rally for Minions, and I am excited for it. Liandry's Lament is an AP caster's best friend, and it's essentially the Summoner's Rift version of Burning Torch. It looks really cool, and I'm looking forward to using it. Brand is gonna burn things even more than he already does. So, thanks for watching, everyone. I apologize again for my voice and the crazy length of this video. I just really wanted to talk about all of this now, and there's so much stuff to talk about. So thank you again for watching. Leave a comment below to tell me what you thought of the video. Subscribe if you want for future content. I'm going to talk about a lot of cool new stuff coming up. Lots of awesome League of Legends things. I'd like to thank my friends at VVV Gaming for supporting me. Check them out in the links below and throughout my page. And all will be cool. I'll see you guys next time. This is Gin signing off. Bye!